Okay, so welcome to the free online event and the Accidental Artist. And the whole purpose of this event is just to kind of show how art can enrich your life and unleash the creative person inside all of us. So today we have Cory Amaro here from France, and she has such a cool life. I am so inspired when I talk to you and kind of see what you do. So first, I just appreciate you being here and just want to welcome you. And can you tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of who you are?
Sure. So I've been living here in France for about 27 years. I live in the south of France, in Provence, which means I live by the Mediterranean Sea.
Oh, wow.
I have two grown children. I'm married to a Frenchman, and that's why I'm here. That's the first question most people ask. How did you get to France?
Yeah.
You still have an accent. I didn't learn to speak French until I arrived, and I was in my 30s, so that was a bit of a grand leap, you might say. Other than that, when I arrived, I have always loved the brocante, antiques. Brocante is a word for flea marketing. And since I arrived here with just 2 suitcases, and at that time we lived in Paris, we had a studio with nothing in it. Of course, you couldn't put much in it, but so I went antiquing, and I found that it's a lot different to antique in France than it is in the United States. And there were just so many wonderful things, and pretty soon that little studio just kind of got really full. And so I decided to sell, and that was fun too, because I went to the brocante and I know how to speak French, and a whole world opened up to me, and not just those objects that I love, but conversations and people and laughing and just learning a lot about French history through its objects.
Wow.
And so that's a little bit about me.
Wow. So it's almost the experience that drove you to that, do you think?
I always loved antiques. My mom was a collector. She loved primitive, and I remember going with her as a child. And the primitive weren't my thing. And when I came to France, I really saw that, oh, wow, I think this is where I'm supposed to be.
Wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
I think the two kind of collided in a really good way.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So when did you, before you started doing this stuff in France, when did you become an artist? Did you do things in America before that?
Well, I really thought about that question. And it's hard for me to define myself as an artist, because I hear the word artist, and I think a lot of people are like me. We think of those grand artists that are in the museum, and those people who are so talented and inspiring because they do something that we common folks can't seem to do, or at least myself. So when I hear that word, I think, oh, I'm not an artist, but I do think that I live an artistic life. And I think that's what people see. And I think that's what a lot of people admire too, because we can get caught up in our world and we forget that we can have a beautiful world right around us. And that's how I see myself as an artist. I even have a hard time picking out my toothbrush. I can't just go and buy a toothbrush. It has to be a certain color, so.
I like that too, about pretty much everything.
I just have to pick a certain color for my toothbrush.
I think color is big. It affects your mood. I agree with that.
I just like everything to look nice, and even if it's just a toothbrush. So it could be a little bit crazy at times, and my kids make fun of me, but that's just how I like to do things, and that's how I see my artistic side coming alive. Not because I buy a colored toothbrush, but because I like to set a table, and I like to have a pretty garden, and I enjoy admiring people who are artistic in the way they dress, or the way they speak, or the way they take a photo, or how they make a bouquet of flowers. There's so many ways to be an artist.
That's so cool, because it really is the life we create for ourselves. If we want to make it colorful and fun, then we can.
Yeah,
that's great.
I agree.
Well, so what if you could pick only one thing? I know you do a lot of the antiquing and stuff, the flea markets in France, but what's one thing if you could only do for the rest of your life? And I know as an artist, we're so lucky we can choose anything and do it all the time and change it and grow and do things like that. But if you could only choose one type of art form, would it be your photography or something else?
Well, that's tricky.
maybe two things. If you could only
That's
pick
kind of
two.
that's kind of like putting a child in a candy store and saying you only get one candy. I would, there's so many things that I really admire that if I could only do one thing over and over again, I don't know if it would have anything to do with the things that I do. And that's not really the question you're asking me, and that's not really this interview. That's just my way of like thinking outside of a box, which maybe I shouldn't. But anyway, getting back to that question.
It's okay. Go for it.
Well, before there were computers, and I would think if I was ever on a deserted island, what would be the one thing that I would want to take? I always said I would take a pencil and pencil and a paper. That's two things, but because I like to write and I like to write down my thoughts, and that's how blogging has really helped. So I guess I'm getting into. I would have to have the blog, because with the blog, it's such an artistic endeavor for me. I can put my photography, I can write, I can share with people, I can interact. And so it's a vast world in just a tiny little box. And so if I would take one thing, I would take that, because then I could put all these things into it. Is that cheating?
No, it's not. And I'm so glad you said that, because I think so many people think that art is just painting or art's just drawing, and it's not. And that's the whole purpose of this, is to show people that you can do art in so many different ways and be creative in so many different ways. So I'm glad you said that. That's a perfect answer.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm not a painter, so that probably was why I answered that way.
So do you have a favorite movie that you want to share with anyone that might inspire them, or just something fun that you kind of get inspiration from?
Okay, well, I really love the movie. I think it's about 15 or 20 years old now. It's called The Piano, and it was with Jane Chapman. She's an Australian director. And I just loved how there were those two worlds that collided, that came together, two people, the romance, the struggle, the piano on a boat. And it was so beautifully filmed. And I think it was the first time that I saw a film that took in a large scene and then showed a very detail. Like one of the scenes I remember were the woman is standing, and you see her back. You're looking from the back of her, and you see just the braids of her hair. And the film shows this jungle, and you see that in her mind, it's that same confusion. And all together was so symbolic and beautiful. And that movie has so many scenes like that, that I would think that I watched it, I think, 20 times.
Wow. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
That sounds great. I love it whenever, people push the boundaries and they do something different and not just the norm. So that's great. And so, Cory, who inspires you?
Oh, wow. There are so many different people who I know and who I don't know. There are things and there are places. There's sound and smells. There's so many things that inspire me. But I would say that probably the most inspiring thing comes from people who appreciate what I do. Maybe that's a bit selfish, but when somebody appreciates what I do, I can do it again and again and do more because I want to make them happy.
Right. It's a good motivator.
Yeah, there's that. As far as a muse, what type is a muse to me? Definitely going to Brooklyn, going to any flea market, where stories are in the objects and where things seem to speak even though they don't. And the history is evident. It's not something sleek and straight and plain, which those are good, but I'm so inspired by things and the stories behind them and how it came to be. And more importantly, even though it's so simple, is something like simple like a ribbon or a paper, something so delicate and fine, and how it has survived all these years to be placed in my hand. And I find that very inspiring.
That is so cool. And then you can turn it into things that are kind of like what's behind you, your collage of things you found and that's special and art to you. That's really cool. Oh, well, do you think... What was that?
Little simple things. They don't have to be extraordinary to be artistic and to make someone feel comfortable and safe. I think that's what a home does, and that's what I try to inspire to have, is a beautiful home.
That's so cool. So, the whole purpose of this is to, have everyone kind of find their way with something with art to be inspired. And so, do you believe anyone can use art to enrich their life?
Well, of course. I can't imagine someone not doing that. To me, it would be like going through life blindfolded, not hearing, not smelling, never eating. Because, all our emotions and our senses lend to be in an artistic way, a creative way, curious and exploring and discovering. And to me, that's artistic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
so. Great. Yes, answering your question, I definitely. Everyone has their way. You just have to find it and believe in it. And if it enriches their life and makes them happy, that's the point of it.
Right. That's great. And so, what advice would you give someone that maybe has never done art, maybe has never taken a class, photography, like that was just not their thing? What advice could you give somebody like that just wants to maybe start art, but they're not sure how?
Well, I have two examples, if I can.
Sure.
One was when I started photography. I've never taken lessons or even studied or taken a class. I just knew that I liked looking at objects and trying to capture what I see. And I was one time I was speaking with a friend of mine who is a professional photographer, and he does lovely work. And I asked him his opinion, like, what should I do? Should I take a class, or what would be the next step? And he said to me, the best way to learn how to take a photograph, in his opinion, was to mimic a photo that you loved. And what he meant by that was, when you see a photograph that you love, try to do the same thing. So he had a photo of the sea, the Northern California coastline of Mendocino. And I went out there with my camera, and I tried to take a picture like he had taken. And I learned so much. I would take the photo and say, oh, there's no clouds, because there was that texture missing, or, oh, the light was too bright, or, oh, I need it to be dimmer, or it has to be the midday, or the waves aren't breaking hard enough. And because your eyes seeing teaches you so much, if you just take the time to really see things. And so I would say that for people to find something they love, maybe it's not photography, but when they admire something, try to mimic that. Try to copy it. Try to incorporate that into your own lifestyle. And that's hard to do, but you learn a lot through it. And then you'll find your own way. So that would be the first thing I would say to someone who wanted to be more artistic in their own life. And then I guess the second thing would be, what do you love? What makes you happy? What makes you get that urge feeling that you just can't wait to do it again? And maybe it's through dancing, or maybe it's through something of nature, or maybe it's just being with someone, because you can have a very artistic relationship, a very creative relationship with people or places or things. So it's just finding what you love and exploring it. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. You'll have to cut that out.
No, it makes perfect sense. And, it's so true. A lot of times we think, oh, we can't do something. But if somebody walks us through, kind of like my art business, I walk them through step by step to do a painting just like I'm teaching. And it's people that go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And then once they do it, they have the courage, to kind of branch out and try something new. So I totally agree with what you just said.
Right, yes. So like you said, taking this step by step, learning through stuff, or trying to do what they see, mimicking that, or recreating it. And then I guess not being afraid.
Yeah.
I hear myself speaking back. Not being afraid of how you have a creative or artistic lifestyle, and letting it just flow, and not saying, oh, that's not right, or that's not the color of the moment, or nobody's going to buy this, or that's not really important, because that's simply not true. I wish I could show you things that I love, so you could say, oh, yeah, if the painting's ripped, oh, I like that.
I'll have to come to France one day and visit you on one of your art things you have going on.
Yeah, a friend and I are creating this, we call it the French Muse Experience, because so many people have asked us about our lifestyles and how can I come to France? Can you show me? Can you give me ideas? So we created this experience, a week-long experience where people come, small groups, and we lead them through really creative, different artists in the area that are behind doors. They're not even public. So it's like tasting. It's kind of like what you're doing with your interviews, encouraging people to live artistic lives. And we're over here saying, okay, come here and let us show you how anything can happen. We have a friend, she's an artist in a broken down building, literally. And it's so amazing in the interior of it. And when you walk in there, even if you're not a person who likes something old and broken, it's so creative that you cannot not appreciate it. So that's what we're trying to do too now.
That is so cool. I know when I heard you talk about that on the phone the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, one day, I told my mother-in-law, I said, one day, we've been wanting to go to Paris. You got to come with me and go see Cory. And so she can take us to all the secret artist places in France. That would be so much fun.
Oh, I hope you come. Bring an empty suitcase, or at least two.
Okay. Okay, I will. Well, also, one thing that we're kind of doing for our listeners through this is we're allowing, everyone to kind of offer a free gift. So if you want to maybe talk about just a little bit about maybe what you might have for our viewers today.
Okay. So I said earlier that I write this blog, and often on it I give gifts away. And so that's what I plan to do. And of course, it'll be something old, and it'll be something that I probably found the weekend right behind me. So to say what it is, it's hard to say right now, but I can say that I've given a variety of things, and they might not be a paintbrush or an old canvas, but it'll definitely be something that'll inspire you to come to France, or maybe inspire you to explore the area that you want to explore. So maybe it'll be like old postcards, or maybe it'll be a little box, or something old, at least 100 years old, and something sweet about this big, so that it'll fit in an envelope and
that's
go
great.
to the next person.
Well, great. Yeah, and I'll make sure to provide the link too whenever it gets, for that. We'll have a link so you can get to that area. But anyway, I guess my last question is just, do you have any final thoughts?
I would say I guess if I had to teach or give a lesson or a bit of advice about being creative or artistic, I would just say to take the time every day, just take 1 minute and just be present in the moment and what's around you through your senses. If it's just what are you smelling or seeing or hearing, and to find that. Like I hear children playing outside because there's a playground not far away. And when I look out, I can see spring is starting. So just to stop and appreciate those details, because I think it's those tiny little details that lead us to something big. And if we miss them and we don't take time to appreciate it, well, it just seems like what a waste of the present moment, of all the things that are right in front of you. They're just saying, come and let explore and have curiosity lead you. So
that's great. Oh, thank you, Cory. It's been so much fun having you on The Accidental Artist, and I hope that everyone can learn from you and how art can enrich their life and unleash the creative person inside all of us. And I thank you so much for your time and all your inspiration.
Well, thanks for inviting me and letting me be a part of this. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.